Hey there, Games Apprentice back with another Evercade video, and this week I'm going to be looking at the Intellivision Collection 1. Let's check it out. I've never played an Intellivision game before, but I was really excited about the Amico. I'm no longer excited about the Amico. There are 12 games on this one, here they are ranked from worst to best. Whenever I see a sport game on these collections, I brace myself for the worst, as most sport games don't age well, as they're generally designed to best represent that sport rather than just be fun games. Slapshot Super Pro is absolutely no exception to that mindset, and was the game on this collection that I tapped out on the quickest. I've always liked the idea of ice hockey games, but for the most part I find that with the tiny net and giant goalie, they're so damn hard to score in. Add that to the fact that this one is so slow, everyone's obviously on ice, but mainly just to the detriment of the control and the fun, and it's mind-numbingly boring. Definitely a good form of torture, not a good use of time. As the name indicates, clearly little effort went into making Frog Bog. In Frog Bog, you jump back and forth between two lily pads trying to eat insects, whilst competing against another frog who's doing the same thing. This game is all about timing, and getting that timing right is incredibly difficult. The controls responsiveness isn't great either, making it even harder. It's just very dull and repetitive, and it feels like it could be on one of those terrible LCD games. Except, you know, LCD games are cool as fuck. There's a lot of versions of Snake out there, and if you had a mobile phone around the turn of the century, you probably played a lot of it. But Snafu isn't a particularly good one. It's 4 snakes, all trying to take each other out. One-on-one Snake works, but 4-way Snake, not so much. You don't really get much of a strategy, it's just hoping that multiple snakes don't gang up on you. Although at first glance Snake will be the first game that comes to mind with this, it actually plays more like Tron Light Cycles. What makes this game particularly annoying though is that when another snake is killed, the game sort of pauses and glitches a little bit, rendering any inputs either side of death null and void. But only for you, not for your opponents. So if you need to turn and another snake is killed, you're pretty screwed. What if Pac-Man were a medieval dragon fight? I thought I'd quite like this game, but it's really irritating. The aim is basically to kill the birds, which for some reason then give you the power to kill the dragon, like Pac-Man's power pill. You also pick up helpful items along the way. The main thing that ruins the game is the maze keeps changing. This initially seemed like it might make it more interesting, but it's just incredibly irritating. Path will just appear and disappear seemingly at random, and it just makes it really frustrating to play. You'll be chasing a dragon and suddenly the path is blocked, or you'll be running away and suddenly you're at a dead end. It just feels unnecessary, especially with how quick and seemingly unpredictable it is. You can even just become stuck in the maze if it grows in the place that you stood. I think it would have been fine without this mechanic, but yeah, then it would have just been Pac-Man. So you could just go play Pac-Man. If you've seen my Atari reviews or seen me in an arcade, you'll know that I love Asteroids. I'm also a big fan of Galaga, and if Asteroids and Galaga had a child, it would be Astro Smash. Unfortunately, that child wouldn't have had any friends because after you'd spent a few minutes with it, you'll find out it's incredibly boring. A bit like my childhood, except my mum said everyone was just jealous of me and my sick coin collection. The score goes down slightly if you miss an asteroid, but not enough to risk a life for it, making it just a bit too easy to be fun. It's frustrating because just having the score reduction more drastic, or the screen moving down or something when you miss one, would have easily turned a bad game into a good one. This game reminded me of Dig Dug 2, although I probably preferred this to that, but I still don't like this. You control a penguin that skates around trying to create rectangles around enemies, dropping them into the sea, drowning them in the ice-cold waters purely for your own amusement. Luckily for these poor defenceless animals, and unlucky for you, there's a really annoying seal policing the situation and trying to murder the penguin. It's tough to judge this one because it's not really my sort of game. It's alright I guess, but it's a bit basic. I can't imagine anyone playing this one for too long. Buzz Bomber is basically Centipede but with bees. The main difference is that the bees are all separate and at times they'll randomly slow down and stop. It's also a bit more forgiving than Centipede, as when they get to the bottom, they just add a small blocker. I'm not a huge mark for Centipede or anything, but it's not hard to deduce that Centipede is a much better game than this. Again, it's another one that feels a bit too easy. Arcade games really live and die on getting that difficulty balance just right, and this one fails. It's okay though. This one is fine, it's perfectly playable, but it's a pinball game on the Evercade, which also has Psycho Pinball on it. It's certainly better than Pinball on the Atari Collection. It feels more like Pinball, but the board's just incredibly basic. It's understandable for the time, but it doesn't hold up. You need a bit of showmanship to keep pinball games interesting. It's mild fun, but it won't keep you entertained for long. This is quite an interesting game that's more fun than I thought it was going to be, having word in the title. It's a puzzle arcade shooter where 2 letters fly across the screen, and you need to grab a vowel from your depot of 4 vowels and hit the 2 letters, making it into a 3-letter word. It's kind of fun, but again it's another one where there's just not enough peril to it, and where you don't have the letter that you need and the words zooming across the screen, it seems a bit unfair. So you can try keeping 4 different letters at a time, adding a bit more challenge, but it certainly could have been done a bit better. This one's a fairly fun game that I'm sure I've played clones or remakes of, as it felt really familiar. You start off with a small fish, and you need to eat fish that are smaller than you to grow, allowing you to eat bigger and bigger fish. Possibly the original inspiration for the excellent Katamari games. It's fun working your way up, with dreams of eventually taking down the shark, but then when a bigger fish kills you after you've had a good run and you start over, it feels a bit gutting. It's such a slow game that it just makes you think, can I be bothered leveling up my fish again? After a couple of good runs, the answer is probably no. What would Pac-Man be like with guns? As it turns out, pretty fun. In Night Stalker, you move around a maze and can shoot 1 bullet at a time, unable to fire again until you've hit something. Some enemies can shoot back, but not under the same 1 bullet restrictions that you're under, whilst bats just fly around being annoying. It's a bit on the slow side and doesn't really get going quick enough, but once you do get going, it's a pretty fun game. My Evercade Gem of the Week, and the only game on this list not to be released in the 80s, is Princess Quest, releasing in 2015. This game does a great job of showing what the Intellivision was capable of in the right hands, and the juxtaposition of this with other games on the cart really shows how far the game designers come, even using the same technology. Princess Quest is a fast action platform game with an awesome soundtrack and big sprites. It feels inspired a bit by Ghouls and Ghosts with the character design and animation, but honestly, I'd take this over that any day. When it comes to this collection, Princess Quest is absolutely a diamond in the rough. Well, maybe not a diamond, but a nice 7 out of 10 gemstone, whatever that is. Ruby or something. A ruby in the rough. Sounds like a title for a 70s porno. With the odd exception then, this was mostly an unpleasant experience. Having only seen screenshots of the game prior, I knew that I was probably in for a rough time with this one, not because I've got any personal hang-ups about retro games and retro graphics, but because from my experience, if it's an 80s game and I've not heard of it, odds are it's not good. I was pleasantly surprised by Princess Quest, but I was also a bit disappointed when I found out that that only came out 10 years ago and wasn't an original release. I did somewhat enjoy Night Stalker and Shark, but of the remaining 9 games, I didn't really like any, and a couple of them really pissed me off. For that reason, I'm going to score this collection a 3.5 out of 10. Like with a lot of these collections, just because I didn't give it a high score doesn't mean that you shouldn't get it, or that I regret playing it. It's always cool to see collections from old systems, especially ones that I never owned, even if they're not great. As always, thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like it and click subscribe for more of my content and to help this channel grow. Hopefully I'll catch you next time.